No one who was ostracised more than the person who did my next worst job, who was the sin eater, and his job involved eating bread off a corpse. Because in the countryside they believed in a mixture of religion and old-style folk magic. And one of the things that they thought was that if someone died without their sins being forgiven, then they would go to hell. So if someone passed away without absolution, they would place some salt and some bread on the corpse, which were supposed to absorb the sins, and then the sin eater came along, and in order to get rid of the sins completely, he ate the salt. And
doing laundry can kill you in the Victorian era. As we learned from my multiple videos on the Victorian era, nothing should shock us anymore. So not only were the soaps and things they would use to clean clothes kind of terrible, there was the invention of the mangle, which looked like this. So what you would do is you would crank this and feed wet clothes to it and it would wring out the clothes. This machine was horrible for women and children. Not only would women's hair and clothes get stuck in the wheels and the actual mangle rollers, children, being stupid, thought this was like a fun toy to like mess around with. No. And many children, and maid women, lost limbs and their life from this machine. These women would like put their fingers in it and get like messed up. And women would get their sleeves and caught and like hair caught in it, grow now. And it's not shocking why it's called the mangle.
if scraping the raw flesh off dead animals, then soaking them in pools of water and dog feces appeals, then this is the job for you.
And that lime is going to loosen the hair by the roots, and also it'll swell the fat on the inside so that it's easy to cut off.
Your arms are stink after this.
Oh, God! Oh, poor, yeah, take over for a bit while I go and die in a corner. Well, my first worst job is the saltpeter man, and his task was to collect the basic ingredient for gunpowder. The most common way was by processing urine. They established this crazy kind of milk run, but instead of leaving milk on people's doorsteps, they went from door to door collecting urine that people had left out for them.
And every drop was crucial, because the gunpowder plot kicked off a whole century of violence. It was the saltpeter man who fueled every musket and cannon. 2, 1... This is the world turned upside down, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, this is exactly all the things that a woman should not be doing.
Witches were a threat to everything that 16th century Britain held dear. And it was the moral weakness of women which was at the heart of this fear. These guardians of chastity and family values and faith could be tempted to the dark side.
Why were hundreds of women believed to be committing horrific supernatural crimes?
The grinding up of bones of babies, of murdered children, would make the broomstick fly.
What I find so eerie about this is that she stopped being a human being for the guys who are applying this torture.
The whole process culminated in the courtroom, where the confession of the alleged witch was read out. If it convinced the court, she was convicted.
Okay, is this a witch, a werewolf, a vampire? What is going on?
Hi, and believe it or not, I actually do know what's happening in that grave. Those metal contraptions that you're seeing on top of the grave are actually what you call a mort safe, and these are not used to keep the dead from going out, but actually to keep grave robbers from getting in. This is because, like, during the Victorian period, there was a shortage of human cadavers for anatomy classes, and usually scientists and doctors would actually, like, hire grave robbers to rob freshly buried corpses in graves so that they could use them to dissect in their anatomy classes. So yeah, that's not a grave of a witch, a werewolf, or a vampire. That's just a corpse with an overprotective family. Bye.
Name sounds charming, but the job of mudlark certainly wasn't. This place had 50 people a day working here. In Victorian times, this was a grim place to be.
It would have been incredibly smelly. The River Thames was basically like an open sewer. The majority of London's population, their sewage just went straight into the river. Things like offal from the city's slaughterhouses, even things like dead dogs, dead cats, even dead bodies from murdered people who'd been tossed into the river.
So who were the people who were poking around here looking for stuff?
They were very young children who were perhaps orphans, old women who were either widowed or perhaps their husbands had turned to drink and couldn't work. They were forced to come onto the foreshore to try and find any tiny scrap that they could sell on.
They gave their children death toys in the Victorian era. In the Victorian era, toys were brightly colored, mostly using lead paint, and lead was also malleable enough to where they made toy soldiers with it. And because lead paint doesn't have an unpleasant taste, children were very likely to put their toys in their mouth or lick them. And just one flake could be enough to poison them and attack their nervous system. Also in the Victorian era, they used baby bottles that were porous and basically were susceptible to very terrible bacterial growth, and basically kind of killed their children by accident, and which led to a low infant mortality rate.
Being a barber was a very gruesome way to earn a living. In the Middle Ages, barbers were qualified to use a range of razors, knives and scalpels. Haircuts went hand in hand with amputation and bloodletting. The body supposedly contained 4 humours: blood, phlegm and yellow and black biles. Ill health was caused by their imbalance. To diagnose a patient, you compared their urine with charts by sight, smell and...
Taste it just to check.
God. You don't need to taste anymore, you really don't.
Right. I would say that you're normally a choleric person, but at the moment it's got a bit darker, so you've got an excess of melancholy in your body. So you've been a bit down lately, you've been depressed.
Yeah, just a
bit. And that's been affecting your health.
Bristol City aren't winning often enough.
Oh, well, I can't cure that.
There's nobody doing that, I don't think. I am a purple maker's assistant, and this is a worse job that disappeared during the siege of Constantinople when all the purple makers were wiped out. Oh!
That's the idea. That's it. This is in order to extract the dye.
And this is shellfish that have been fermenting for 10 days.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh! Oh, wow, that was bad out there. No! I don't know. And after half an hour, it's time to expose the cloth to the air and see if it's worked.
Well, as you can see.
Look at that now, isn't that fantastic? We've really proved the process works.
The Victorians would set raisins on fire for fun. They would take raisins and put it in a bowl of rum and then light it on fire. They then would count tally of who would get the most raisins. They would pick them out and eat them without getting burned, or who had the most. I wish I was making it up. Also, please do not play Snapdragon. There's a reason it's not played anymore. Don't do it.
Welcome to the world of the puke collector. Come on.
There's a common belief that Romans had a room called a vomitarium where they used to throw up. Sadly for me, it's not quite true.
Hang on. Dave's chucked up. That's disgusting.
You're the slave, so you've got to clear up. He's not going to do it.
Of course I have to clear up. This is a worse job, isn't it?
Puke collectors had to be prepared to do anything.
The Victorian era was very weird. One of my favorite historical fashion periods was actually very low-key morbid and weird. People would put their newly deceased relatives in their best clothing and set them up in lifelike poses and take a photograph of them. They did this to take one last photograph of their loved one for some kind of commemoration. So a lot of the portraits that you actually see the Victorian era from about waist up, yeah, they low-key dead in that picture. Not this one though, not this one. Most of the portrait ones there, yeah, they probably dead.
In an age where death was frequent and grief openly displayed, clipping the lock of hair of a loved one was a way to cross the bridge of death and keep the memory of the departed alive and close. Locks of hair were clipped from the deceased and woven into jewelry that were worn by family members and friends and loved ones. I hope you've enjoyed the small pieces from my own collection as much as I've enjoyed showing you.
Victorian toilets would explode. Whether you were on it or not, you could have very well James Bonded Jimmy Neutron yourself off the pot. If you remember my Victorian gas bath video, I mentioned indoor plumbing was fairly a new thing. And because of that, buildups of methane from waste would compact together and compress and cause toilets and also sewer sectors underground to explode. Until Thomas Crapper, yes, that's his name, invented the siphon valve to circulate the methane back out into the sewers and not into the toilet and compact and explode. It got rid of the exploding toilet problem, but all the methane would still build up in the underground sewers and ignite. Whew.
More information that you never asked for that I'm about to give you. So this is the first commercially produced Ouija board from the Victorian era. It is constructed entirely from wood and was manufactured by the Kennard Novelty Company. Yep, that means it was originally marketed as a toy. If you turn it over, you'll notice the patent date from 1891. The patent was applied for in 1890 and issued of February of 1891.
I often find really interesting things in yearbooks, like this dance card. This is from a ball in the 1890s, or should I say a masquerade, in Daytona, Florida, Tuesday, February 18th, 1890. I have always wanted a dance card. I can't believe I came across this. So what it is, basically these are the dances that they had going on at the ball that night, and these are the names of the gentlemen to which this lady danced with. I don't know too much about dance cards, so if any of you guys know, I'm sure you do, please drop it in the comments. And let me know if you want to see other cool stuff that I find.